because how will we ever get to truth? And I'll say this in the context of your podcast and what you're doing with your podcast too. Like, unless we incorporate and compare and contrast other belief systems, both within our own church, people seeing the gospel differently, as well as outside our church, faith traditions that see things totally differently, unless we compare and contrast and have open dialogue and are willing to be like, now, wait a minute, like, why do you think that? But I think this. Unless you can do that, how will you ever sort out what is true and what isn't? Like, that is anything that is truly a universal truth that is going to be good for mankind is going to come out in the wash of all of that debate and pushback, if you're willing to have it. If you're not willing to have it and you're just going to sit in your corner, be backed up in your corner with your little scepter of truth and righteousness, it's a small place to be, right?
Amen. Welcome back to That's Church. I'm Emily Call here with my sister, Ashley Sanders. Before we dive in, I want to share something really beautiful that our friend Tiffany Sowby, one of our guests today, has created through her nonprofit called Rising Violet. 3 times a year, Rising Violets provides a $1,000 support gift to women. It's often mothers who were once supported by a partner and are now looking toward financial independence. These gifts are not handouts. They're a way of helping women get on their feet, rebuild their lives with dignity, and in turn, give back to the community. You can learn about their mission of lifting women at risingviolet.org. Okay, for That's Church news, we are so excited to announce that we are starting a book club that will be led by our board member, Ann Pimentel. And we are also hosting field trips. Our last one was at a beautiful sangha in Provo. We did some meditations. The walking meditation was my favorite. Our board member, Rebecca Young, led that, and she'll be leading all of those going forward. We have another one coming up here. So those are going to be great. The book club is in November. We also have an event coming up in the fall, and we are super excited to announce our first retreat in the spring. And finally, today we are joined by Allyson Reynolds and Tiffany Sowby. They are the co-hosts of the Sisterhood Podcast. Allyson and Tiffany met over a decade ago while working with the Power of Moms organization, where they wrote articles, organized retreats, and occasionally showed up on a popular Utah daytime TV show, Studio 5. Their long friendship and deep conversations sparked the creation of the podcast, which now serves as an encouraging place for women who love the gospel but sometimes struggle with the LDS Church. They aim to help women feel less alone and stronger through courageous conversations about faith, politics, and social issues. Allyson has lived all over the U.S., but is a Midwest girl at heart and now lives in Minnesota. She also started the popular Instagram account at Latter Day Democracy, which grew super quickly. She started it right before the election, and it just keeps growing. It's awesome. I'm really excited about it. Check that out. Tiffany grew up in England and now lives in Utah. Together, they're raising 9 children, 2 husbands, a dog, and some goats. Every one of their Sisterhood podcast episodes ends with their favorite quote by Ruth Ginsburg: "Keep fighting for the things that you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you." We just love that so much. And we're so excited to share this conversation with Allyson and Tiffany. Tiffany and Allyson, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We are so happy to have you. We just love you so much as friends, and we adore your podcast as well. So let's start by tell our listeners and us a little bit about Sisterhood Podcast, but also tell us what inspired it. Like, how did this all get started?
Oh boy, here's going to be the biggest problem is which one of us talks. Tiffany and I are constantly like interrupting each other, talking over each other. I mean,
We're the
it's
same.
a little bit was in the bio, but it just began with an organic friendship after we were working together for several years with the Power Moms organization. And just as we became personal friends and kept having more conversations, we realized we felt passionate about so many similar things related to women. And we threw around lots of different ideas, but it was Tiffany's idea to start a podcast. I was kind of thinking still of writing. Like, writing was kind of my bigger passion, but I also like to spout off as much as Tiffany does. So the podcast has really worked out. It's funny though to think back. We originally pitched a show to BYU radio, and that was a whole thing. Like we did some demo episodes with them, and of course they ended up with the fabulous Lisa Valentine. So she was always going to upstage us, I'm sure. We won't go into that. Do not tell the story, Tiffany. I know what you're thinking of. Don't tell it.
I want the story.
I don't know what story I'm thinking. This is a little bit like when you ask people like that are married, tell us your dating story. How did you meet? Like we both have these different, ideas. I don't even remember what story you're telling about. And I also don't remember that I was the one that suggested a podcast.
You don't?
No.
Well,
I remember I said to Allyson, because we were kind of focusing more on motherhood. That had been kind of our past experience. Yeah. And I said, what about, enlarging it, like thinking more women? And she was like, oh, okay. I won't tell the story of that.
That's the story.
That's the story. Okay. Yeah. Yes. No. And so it was just kind of like, where should we take this? And our podcast started out being very
general and broad.
Yeah, very general and broad.
Well,
but we started. Go ahead.
We were specifically trying to break out of the like Mormon mom mold, because we were like, there's so much of that. There's enough of that. And we've been doing that for years. We want to just address women in general and women's issues in general. So that was definitely like one iteration of the podcast. That was how we started.
And we started, I think it was like every third episode, we called it For the Members in the Room. And we talked about church things. And we started to realize those were really some of our most popular and well-received episodes. And we realized, okay, we've got something, there's something here that maybe we should explore. Yeah. And then we decided to kind of branch out to faith, politics, and social issues. And so we've tweaked. I mean, we've done a lot of tweaking over the time.
A lot of versions, but the analytics were really clear, and we resisted it because, again, we were like, we don't want to just be another Mormon mommy podcast or blog or whatever, and so, but then, I think it was with 2020, when 2020 hit, and there were so many things, so much of the intersection of faith, politics, and social issues. That was kind of the beginning of this latest iteration that we have stuck with now for a while. And it seems to be really striking a chord with the LDS women. We didn't want to be in this space, but ultimately
here we are.
But ultimately it was like, this is who we are, and we feel passionate about these things. And what can we speak to better than the struggles of LDS women and these topics specific to LDS women? So we resisted it, but now we're fully leaning into it.
Oh, I love it. I think it's so unique too. And I think, like you mentioned, 2020 brought politics into our daily lives in a totally different way. I mean, so many women I know who weren't into politics are like, they're experts now. So I do think like it came around. Your podcast probably struck a chord because it was such a needed outlet for probably many women and men. I'm sure you have male listeners as well, but we've loved it for some time now as well.
Well, and we try to be, as far as church things, we come from a place of faith. We talk about that in our bio. Like, we are faithful women. We are believing women, but we are able to look critically at some of the doctrines and the culture and the policy. And I feel like a lot of people feel validation from us. Although with that comes people, Allyson had an exchange with someone yesterday who's feeling like we're just spreading this like cancer throughout and causing doubts and la-di-da. And that's not our intention. Our intention is simply we would love to have more the style where we were completely neutral, where they didn't even know where we stood on things. We can't. We've tried that. We are too opinionated.
That's not you.
It's not. We are so damn opinionated. We have strong opinions, and we're not really, we're not pushovers. We're going to say what we feel, and some will receive it well, some won't. But overall, we really do try to come from a place of love and acceptance and faith, and some will like it, some won't.
And I think, like we say in the bio, like we want to bring together the full faith spectrum. That would be our dream. Like, the 80%, the super orthodox members are more than welcome to be here and be in this space and have these conversations, but they don't always want to be, or it feels threatening or whatever. But I think it's important to have people with our views and our positions that are a minority view. Maybe you could just say in the American church, I don't know if I would say globally, but we do kind of have minority opinions and views and perspectives and how we view our faith. But it's very important for women who feel like us and think like us, who are still faithful and active in the church, to be able to see that represented and have those conversations from that perspective. And that's just one of my big goals and dreams with this podcast, is just to broaden the umbrella, lengthen the table. We need to be accepting and okay with a full spectrum of faith and people coming at the faith from very different perspectives. And that's okay. And it's actually good and healthy to
and
have
that is really one of our strengths. We are very deliberate. We will even call people by name that we know, mutual friends or family members, and say, how can we reframe that concept so that Molly will understand it, or so that, I'm trying to come up with fake names. That was a random name. I'm trying not to say the real name, or how Susie will interpret that. And these people that we're talking about are people that are either super orthodox, or you guys are making me focus. But we really do try to do that. And I feel like that's a really deliberate, like, we are picturing these people. We are picturing so-and-so listening, and what do we want them to take away? So we need to tone down our spouting off and make it more palatable to this person. So I think that's a really great strength. I don't know how we do in it. We certainly don't know the array of listeners. I would assume most of our listeners tend to be more like-minded, like ourselves. But we do know that we do have a few conservative, or more, I don't want to say conservative, but more orthodox, more traditional members of the church.
But the woman who sent a DM yesterday is pretty sure that we're tearing down the church and destroying faith. So there's that. But it's funny. And I haven't posted the comments yet. I'm going to do that tonight, just as this story gets closer to expiring. All the comments, Tiffany, that have come in, you'll be happy to see them, with just women being like, are you kidding? Like, knowing there are people like you that think like you, other women talking about this, who think like this is one way you help me to stay in the church. I'm trying to stay in the church, and you're making that possible. So
for that one comment that thinks we're, ruining people's faith, we probably have 20 that are saying, oh my word,
that's awesome.
And that is really important to us. The last thing we would ever want to be is the reason for someone to have a faith crisis or leave. But what we do want is people to think. You just got to.
And they're welcome to not listen if they think that.
Don't come into our Instagram or come into our podcast and make these accusations. Just move along.
Also, we have a ton of people who have left the church, and we have no judgment for those people. And we totally support and understand why some people need to leave. And I think that is a strength too, is that we're here saying, this is why we're here. This is why we think it's worthwhile to stay, and we encourage you if you want to stay, but we understand 100% why some people need to go.
And I think you're there to help people in that transition process to do it gracefully, and supported and feeling validated. So whether you're helping them leave or you're helping them stay, I think it's valid. And also you just give a lot of great information. Like I remember moments in my life, and just even like this last year, that I'm like, I need to listen to the news more, or be more involved in politics, or just know what's going on in the church. And your podcast is so great and like a central place for that, I feel like. And you're both so well educated and so you're just so well spoken, and you don't beat around the bush, because it's real and it's genuine and authentic to you and to your opinions, and also opinions of others. I've loved how you've started incorporating listeners, little snippets of video or snippets of audio in there. It's awesome. It's so fun to hear. This last episode I just listened to, I was like, oh my gosh, I love hearing from other people, because I feel very validated hearing things from you two, but then hearing little bits from other people too. It's like
voices.
Yeah, more voices that are different, and they all are a little different from each other. And so it's beautiful. It's just such a beautiful thing that you're doing.
It's like girls' camp testimony meeting.
Yes.
There's nothing like it. There is nothing like that. So true. So true. And the more voices, the better, like I've always thought that with like accounts similar to mine and podcasts similar to ours, like there can never be too many. Yeah. And I feel like the more there are, the more the church has to listen as well, and like you said, we're all members, and we have the right to share our opinions as well. Right. And I think too, as women, sometimes we tend to not feel like our opinions matter as much. There are certain ways that women have been put down in that way, and we're not being put down anymore, and we're not going to be quiet about things. And I think you guys really emphasize that in your podcast.
That picture of Taylor Swift at her Paris concert comes to mind. Do you guys know the one I'm talking about? Oh shoot!
Yes.
Ashley.
Yes, where she's the one where she's like screaming, like bent over. Yeah. Yes.
Oh well, I've seen it the last couple of days with the meme with Harrison. What's his name? The Chiefs player's terrible talk. Yeah, and I've seen it multiple places.
Yeah, that's probably you probably saw it in our stories where I posted it.
Maybe so.
I love it. Such a great reference.
Yeah, that's funny. I just saw a clip on TikTok, or I think it was on Reels on Instagram, and it was Ellen Pompeo. Is that her name? Anyway, the what's her name from Grey's Anatomy?
That's her.
What's her character's name though? No, I can't think of her name. Anyway, the main character on Grey's Anatomy. The actress though, she was on a talk show, and she said that she was making a big change. I didn't see the whole interview. It was just a clip, but she was doing something and making a change. And she said, all of the people around me were just silent about it. And she said, a lot of times when we're courageous and we speak out, the people that are closest to us are not going to cheer us on. Like we may make a difference, but we may not get cheered on, and that's okay. You're still making a difference, you know?
So, man, we totally were having this, or Tiffany was having this conversation in stories a week or so ago, because Tiffany will frequently speak up, but no one will back her up. And sometimes you can be in the mood for that, and other times you might not be in a good place for that. And I personally feel like the takeaway from that is, if someone has the bravery to speak up and you agree, even if it is a minority opinion, I feel like, especially as women, we need to be supporting each other and speaking up with that person who has the bravery to step up and start the conversation.
Referring to situations like a sacrament meeting, or not sacrament, a Sunday school or Relief Society, where there's that ability to back people up.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
But if not, I appreciate Ellen's comment too. But in my mind, I'm like, but I want us. Yeah, I love the idea of us all sticking up for each other as women and having the bravery to speak our truth, not just behind the phone, on the Sisterhood podcast stories, but I hope that we can be giving women the bravery to speak up in real life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love that so much.
Agreed. So our podcast, as you know, is about different faiths. And we've talked with both of you, and you've mentioned some situations and some people that you've connected with in different religions or different faith traditions. So Tiffany, will you just share with us some experiences that you've had?
Yes. So as a child, up until my mid-teens or early teens, I grew up in England, just outside of London. And so I went to, and I was active. I was born a member of the LDS Church, always been a member. But I went to school with nobody that even knew what a Mormon was, never even heard of the LDS Church. And my very best friend growing up was Catholic from across the road. And so I grew up seeing her rosary beads in her room and a little statue of Mary in their kitchen. And then when I went to junior high, I went to school with a Hindu, a Muslim, and other religions. But my experience specifically that I remember, and I really think cemented something in my young 13-year-old brain, was a girl who was a Muslim. And she was a little bit of a misfit among the the students. And she would come sometimes. She would leave. Now I know as an adult, she obviously left for Ramadan, like celebrations, and she'd come back with the henna tattoos all over her hands, and people would kind of tease her a little bit. And I never felt, I didn't necessarily stand up for her as I should, but I never teased her. And I remember one day she had ridden the bus. She had one of our friends had seen her and her dad over the weekend on the bus, and they started laughing about the turban that he was wearing. I don't know the official name. And they were saying, "Oh, did you see so-and-so's dad? You know, he had da-da-da." And I remember right there thinking, if they saw my parents' underwear, they would make fun of me.
Yes.
Good for you.
And I didn't say anything to them because it would have been lost on them. But I remember saying, I don't think we have any place to be making fun. I remember that was kind of the pivotal time that I stood up for Arver and her dad's religious attire. And I've always, and that was really a very, like I said, pivotal time in my life. It was just, you know what, we are all worshiping in our own way, and having that kind of those associations, and just also a few other experience I had, I've always felt like there is a lot of pathways to God. I've never kind of subscribed to the church is true and we're the only true church and we have to do things our way. And that's come at a price, because then I don't really fit in the orthodox space, you know, so it's been kind of a tricky road. But I do attribute a lot of it to those formative years in London, having those associations with people that I knew were happy and fulfilled and lived beautiful lives. They just worshiped differently than I did.
Love it. Oh, that's so awesome. So great that at a younger age you were able to see that like immediately, and that you've been speaking out since you were young. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's so great. And
It's a blessing and a curse, though.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wish I was just like closed-minded and didn't have it, because it comes with a lot of angst and frustration and disappointment.
Which is such a bummer. Yeah, that it has to be that way sometimes. But yeah, sometimes ignorance is bliss. But
Yeah.
But I do think sometimes it takes stepping outside of our comfort zone or going through an experience like that to see that we're not the only religion in the world, and we're not the only people, and there's so many different ways of living, and it's so great that you got that at such a young age.
And I remember this actually just kind of came back to me. So I moved to Utah then when I was like 14, and so then had the polar opposite, you know, right? I went into school and everyone's saying, "Oh, you're new," and I had an English accent, so I stuck out, and everyone thought I was so cool, and it was like, "Are you LDS? Are you Mormon? Are you Mormon?" And I remember thinking, I am, but what if I wasn't? I would feel so excluded right now if I wasn't. And I remember, like you said, I guess I have always spoken out. I was probably a junior or a senior in high school when I actually wrote a letter back in the days when like the Deseret News had you could write like letters to the editor.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was all about that, how I was frustrated with Utah and people just assuming I was LDS. You know, what if I believed in Allah? What if I believed in Buddha? I'll have to find that letter.
That is amazing.
And share that sometime.
Do an episode on that. That is amazing.
Yeah, I should. But it was so just cool. Kind of like we don't have the monopoly on religion.
Mm-hmm. Do you think
it's so fun for me to learn? These are all new stories to me. For as well as
are they
each other?
Yeah,
I'm loving this. This is so fun.
Bonding time.
That's so cool. So. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, and how about you, Allyson?
Do you? Yeah. I was just going to finish with Tiffany. Do you feel like those experiences have changed your testimony, specifically like experiences that you've had with the other religions? Or do you think you just came that way and it didn't change?
I think there's both. I think I came that way. I really do. I mean, I certainly go back and read my journals from when I was like 10, 11, 12. And it is like, I know the church is true. I know it's that childhood chant, you know, rhetoric. Right. But overall, I really do believe this is how I came. I remember asking these kind of hard questions in college. I had a good friend that we kind of battled some of these, like, what is God? Like, does he really exist? And so I've always felt like I didn't have a name for it. Now I know it as the nuanced space. I've always been in this nuanced space, but I didn't have a name for it. And so I just felt really lonely for many years. When I would even talk to my husband or talk to other people or try to make a comment, I didn't comment very much because I just thought, maybe I'm just not as faithful. And I look back at that Tiffany, like 22-year-old, 25-year-old, even 30, 35 years and think, you weren't not faithful. You just were wanting to think outside the box. And I didn't really find a place or words to put to that.
Absolutely.
Until 10 years. So I would say my testimony hasn't really changed. When people talk about a faith shift or a faith crisis, I feel like mine really hasn't changed. I've just been this way. And now I feel validated and supported and seen finally.
That's awesome. I think that's very unusual because I think a lot of people don't go through their faith crisis or kind of like step back and really look at what they believe until they're much older. I don't think I did that until I was maybe 35, like 6 years ago. So that's really awesome that I think that probably is helpful in your stability, like stability mentally, stability spiritually, stability in every way, because I think kind of going through that at an older age just rocks people's world,
And I'll just share one last experience that puts it in context for me, because I can go back to when I was 7.5, when I probably realized I don't subscribe a certain way. And that was after my granddad had died when I was very young, 7. And I was very close to him. It was just myself and my brother. We were the only grandkids. And so it was a really painful loss to have lost him. And he was not a member of the church. And I was at primary, and it was the lesson Plan of Salvation, where they draw the circles and the lines.
Yeah.
And I remember the teacher, and it said spirit prison and this and that. And I said, where's my granddad? And the teacher pointed to spirit prison and goes, your granddad would be there. And as a child, it doesn't matter what adjective you put in front of the word prison. Prison is prison to a 7.5-year-old girl. And I remember looking at that and saying to myself, I don't believe that. My granddad is not in prison. And it's funny that I can, so at 7.5, I had this nuanced view of the Plan of Salvation. So all those years when you see those traditional drawings, I've just always been like, yep, never believed it like that.
That's the stubborn Tiffany too. I mean, and I love that. I say that as a total compliment. That's young Tiffany being like, no, I don't believe that.
Yeah. I got chills. I really, that's so amazing. Oh my gosh.
So when you say, did I come that way? I don't know, but I've been this way since at least 7.5.
Yeah. I would say that's a solid yes.
I think that's confirmation.
And I do think too, though, that it does, and this is kind of unfortunate because I think that a lot of times it does take people having a personal interaction like that to shift the way that they believe and to shift their faith. And for a lot of people, it's, LGBTQ plus issues with the church. It can be women. And anyway, there's so many different topics that it can happen with. But once it happens to you personally, it changes you somehow, or when it happens to a loved one of yours. So I'm sure that just solidified it for you when it was your granddad to be like, that's confirmed. No, in me. And, I think it's okay. I've said that about LGBTQ issues for years, and I don't put that on anyone else. I just say like, well, for me, I don't believe that. And you can believe what you want, but I'm going to believe what I want, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah, I've recently really kind of realized that this whole podcast and getting to know people and things like that, like, it's really humanized people for us. And I think Ashley's exactly right. If you don't know somebody, like our brother being LGBTQ, like coming out when he was younger, it took us a minute to like figure out what we were supposed to do with that information. Of course, initially we were like, love him. That's, of course. But then what? Because the church is saying this, and actually this, so what do we do with that? But it gave us time to like to kind of come to terms with it in our own way and figure out what we thought about it. But if you don't know somebody, like I think that there's the people that are anti-LGBTQ, like they must not know somebody or love somebody, you know, because they must not really get it. And I feel that way with religions as well. Like as we've gotten to know people, it's really humanized them. And people outside of Christianity, like I think outside of LDS, like I think we're brought up, you know, as children to be like the outside, the Gentiles or whatever. I just heard that someone reference people as Gentiles in another podcast, actually. And I was like, oh gosh, that is so crazy that that's even a term. But anyway, like people outside of the church, you know, we look at as being different and they must not be as good people or whatever. And then outside of Christianity, like that's a whole nother level. People outside of like believing in God, like that's a whole nother thing. But as we've talked to these people, we've just interviewed an atheist. We've interviewed people that are Muslim. We've interviewed Jewish people. We've interviewed other Christian faiths, you know, and it's just humanized them so much to gain some love for them and some understanding. And so I hope that's translated through this podcast. And I hope people can gain love for people, even if they don't know them personally, you know, because.
And I agree. But I would push back just a little bit and say, I don't think you have to know someone to like be anti-LGBT or to be pro-LGBT stuff. I think that sometimes some people do just come that way. I know from a young age, I didn't know anybody that was LGBT and it always felt wrong to me. So I certainly think once we know someone, you can't help but love them.
You said it felt wrong to you, Tiffany.
Oh, sorry. It felt right. It felt wrong that the way the church treated them. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, no way.
It felt right. I again, you know, Allyson gets tired of this, but like in 1994, I wrote a paper in college that gay people should be able to adopt children. And I remember my dad thought I was going off of the deep end. And I remember having this battle with him. In 1994, I did not know a single person who was gay.
Wow.
So I wasn't fighting for anyone in particular. And I think it speaks to the quote, it doesn't have to happen to you for it to matter to you.
Yeah.
And so I think that can go along with, you don't have to know someone intimately to care about their issues.
But
once
just be a loving
you
person.
get to know them, like you said, 100% agree. It humanizes them when you can have those conversations and learn and understand.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not like we didn't care about these people before now, or we thought that we were the one and only true church.
Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't have gone on this venture if we had those kind of closed-minded beliefs, but it definitely, I think it just brought a deeper love and a deeper understanding. I think like, you know, if, like you mentioned, you don't have to go to a synagogue to love Jewish people. You can also research from home. There's so much learning we can do right at our fingertips on our phones at any time. But I think going there and seeing the rituals and seeing the services, it does like, it deepens the understanding and it creates that connection where you just realize like, man, we are all more similar than we think. And, you know, atheist or not, you know, Jewish, Mormon, you know, we are all just human and we're just looking for meaning and purpose in this life. And so I think that's more where me was coming from, is that it does just deepen those connections.
Yes, which I 100% agree. I was just saying, I was only pushing back that a lot of people feel these things without knowing anyone intimately.
Yes, I'm so glad you said that because it's so true. I think a lot of times I assume like when people are super pro LGBTQ or super pro whatever, you know, whatever it is, that they must know and love somebody. But it's true. I have talked to several people that don't. They're just loving people. You're just a loving, good person. And that's all it really takes, you know, is just to be a loving, good person, to see other people and to have compassion for others. I also appreciate that you always look out for the underdog. I feel like even in your examples, you are looking out for the underdog. And I've seen that in you in real life as well. Like I've seen just in a group, we've been talking as a group and we're kind of all like in our own, you know, I don't know, like really talking and getting going. And then there was somebody on the outside that said something and nobody really heard her except for you. And you were like, wait, let's listen to her, and you rechanneled this. I don't know why it's making me emotional. You rechanneled the conversation to include that person. And that's just who you are. And so I actually wanted to comment, and I don't know why we moved past this too quickly, but in church too, I love that you pointed out that it's so important to back people up when they are speaking out as well, because I've been that person where I have spoken out and people just look at me like, what? When everyone turns around in their chairs and stares at you and you're like, oh crap, what did I do? What did I say? Like that must have been a little controversial or something, because everyone's facing forward and then suddenly, anyway. But I've also been in rooms where somebody spoke out and I agreed with it. And I just was like, I agree with that. I'm so glad they spoke out about it, but then not back them up. Yeah. And I've been in this situation where I'm like, gosh, I wish someone would back me up here, but I just look like I have this crazy thing on my forehead. And, so I'm so happy that you brought that up, because it's not just about speaking out. It's also about supporting each other. So
thank you.
Okay, Allyson, you have such many stories you've told me about in relation to people of different faiths or different faiths in general.
Yeah, this is one thing that I love about your podcast, because just thinking about this, just having to articulate this is like an aspect of my life I never thought about until this podcast of yours, and you asked me this question. So both of my parents are converts, and that meant growing up, every extended family gathering was with people of different faiths or no faith. And I remember in particular going every other Christmas, we would drive down to Florida to see my mom's side of the family. A few of those sisters and their families were members of what was then the RLDS Church, now Community of Christ. So grew up being in the Community of Christ, little Christmas pageant every other year growing up. And of course, also being in the Midwest, I guess I should back up, grew up in the Midwest. So like Tiffany, I never went to school with members of the church, never had friends who were members of the church at school ever. I had Jewish friends, I had Greek Orthodox friends, lots of Catholic and Lutheran friends. That's, kind of a staple in the Midwest. My boyfriend in high school, who actually ended up joining the church, but he was Lutheran, and we would go to his services on Christmas Eve all the time. And me and my friends would swap services. I remember going to Catholic Mass and other services, and then they'd come with me sometimes to church. Like, it was just a very common part of my upbringing to be exposed to so many different religions. But unlike Tiffany's experience, I did kind of take in the messaging that we were the one and only true church. And I did feel like, oh, I'm in this special church and I've got this special knowledge. And even though we're this little, and I also really took on the persecuted minority complex. Because again, growing up in Illinois, we would go to Nauvoo every summer we would go to Nauvoo. And as a teenager, I was in the City of Joseph pageant. And so I had various experiences where I was, for lack of a better word, I don't know, persecuted, attacked, whatever you want to say. Like, people made fun of me or pointed me out in public and said things to try to humiliate me because of my faith, like school teachers even, right? So I did even though I was exposed to lots of different faith traditions and I had a lot of respect for them, and it was, a very helpful paradigm, I very much, and I'm sure this is an opposite experience of LDS kids who grow up in Utah, very much had like this persecuted minority complex, religious minority complex. And we've got this, special truth, and we're persecuted for it. And it's interesting to articulate that and to recognize that. I don't know if I would have if you wouldn't be asking the question, But then, and I know I shared this with you before too, going to BYU, I was very excited to finally be with like-minded people, right? And I was, in my mind, I was going to have a little Mormon roommate, and we were going to read the Book of Mormon together and go to church together. And it was going to be the first time in my life I had close LDS friends. And my roommate was Muslim from the country of Jordan. But interestingly, even though I was excited to have an LDS roommate, I also, from the time I was young, was very much an adventurer. My parents didn't have a lot of money. They never traveled. We never traveled other than Nauvoo and to see my relatives in Florida. And I just had a real curiosity for just how the world worked. I used to be, like, my childhood dream was to be a Nat Geo photographer and writer, and to just go all over the world and learn about all these different cultures and people. So I did just have this like innate interest in other cultures and people and how they thought and how they lived. So it was a real thrill for me, actually, to have this roommate and be able to ask her so many questions and learn from her. And she was very faithful in putting on her robes and putting out the rug and facing Mecca 5 times a day to pray and observing Ramadan. And, like day one of being together in the dorm, she said to me with a smile on her face, completely straight, completely serious, calm smile on her face. She said, just want to let you know, don't try to convert me or anything, because if I convert to Christianity, I go back home and I'll be killed.
Oh, no pressure. No
Just,
big deal.
Just a little thing. Just a little thing.
But it was so interesting because she actually I felt like she was more faithful in the observance of her faith than I was, praying 5 times a day, deliberately on this rug and putting on the robes to do that, and reading from the Quran, and then watching her and her siblings, celebrate Ramadan and be fasting all day. Like, there were times I remember thinking, I'm not really reading and praying. I mean, those are like staples in our church, right? Say your prayers or read your scriptures. I mean, she's doing this better than I am.
You're like, you're making me feel bad.
Yeah, totally.
That's so crazy. And
so that was a very, like, mind opening, awesome experience. Learned so much from her. And then, of course, going on a mission to Japan and learning about Eastern religion and Buddhism and Shintoism. That was huge. Like, I don't even know where to start or finish with that. But so, and for all those reasons, like, I have a little note here. You were talking before about, what was the phrase that you used, Emily? Because for me, it's when people in Utah refer to literally the entire rest of the planet as the mission field.
Yes. Gentiles. Yeah.
Gentiles. That's what you said. Yes.
Yeah.
So for me, growing up, and I never really heard that term growing up until I came to Utah. And I remember as a student, so I came to Utah as a student. I was there, just for my years at BYU. But then after living in Iowa and California, and we moved to Utah, and we were there from 2010 to 2020. And that was when I think I was kind of, introduced to this phrase where people would talk about the entire planet outside of Utah as the mission field. And that was just so odd to me.
And it's just normal. Like I've talked to people and been like, I'd love to move out of Utah. And they're like, oh, to live in the mission field?
Yes.
No, so just to live outside of Utah.
Well, and the idea that, and it centers Utah so much in such a weird way to call literally the entire planet the mission field, right?
Mm-hmm.
In any case, I grew up with this exposure to many religions and faith traditions, and I had respect for all of them, and I loved learning about all of them, but also had this like persecuted religious minority, we're the one true church mentality. And I would add another layer onto that, which complicated things for me when we moved to Utah later, made it really hard for me to move to Utah, is that often people living outside of Utah have real beef with Utah and Utah Mormons. And feel like they are very different from Utah Mormons and struggle. People who don't grow up in Utah, who then move to Utah, it can be a real struggle. It's a different world. And which Tiffany kind of shared, moving to Utah from England. And I don't think people who have lived most of their lives in Utah really understand what it's like to feel like an outsider, not just as a person of another faith, but as someone who is of the faith, but is not born and raised in Utah. Because it's a different culture and a different mindset. And it's hard to pinpoint what it is.
I remember, sorry, I just wanted to say, I remember when I on my mission in LA, I remember the moment that I okay, so my first baptism, the girl was like, okay, so this is what the church is like. And I was like, no, this is not what the church is really like. You should go to Utah. Like, isn't that awful? Like, I was like, no, you'll love it. Yep. You'll love the church even more if you can experience it in Utah. Like,
wow.
and I'm so glad that you can like be honest and admit that, because when we were, I mean, I was born and raised in Iowa, but then we were there for 9 years in a different part of Iowa and Illinois, but we were 9 years in Iowa City while my husband was going through med school and residency. And there were a lot of, between the med school, the dental school, the business program, there were a lot of LDS people that would move in and out for various programs, students. And it was a joke among the native Iowans who, were just lived there forever, when occasionally, not uncommonly, not infrequently, you would get these younger couples coming in from Utah, and they would say things over the pulpit like, they're just so impressed and can't believe how well the church is functioning here, and the sacrifices people make to go to the temple 4 hours away because they could never do that. And it was mostly impressed so and surprised how well the church is functioning outside of Utah. And everybody there is like, what do you think is happening all over this planet?
You're like, we've been here all along.
Well, I do think that traveling to go to a temple is impressive because we aren't used to that, So when I hear of people doing that, I'm like, wow, that's commitment.
You're
like I don't think I would do it. I don't think I would.
I wouldn't attend.
Even to go here,
I'm so glad you said that, though, because I think there is this unspoken sentiment that people in Utah are not fond of admitting that the church is truer and stronger and righter in Utah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And there are more members outside of the United States than in the United States, and more members probably outside of Utah in the United States than in Utah. And yet, and I get it. That's where the church headquarters are, and so many of the leaders come from Utah. But people, I guess I just want people in Utah to know that members of the church outside of Utah, we all know that feeling is there, and it's for lack of a better word, offensive.
Yeah.
Well, and I would add, from my perspective, being in England, it's not just the Utah; it was American church, and that has changed a little bit from the 70s and 80s, but as it has become a more worldwide church. But that's also I feel like, as Allyson speaking to people outside of Utah, I think people outside of the United States feel that same way. Like, it's not just an American church. We're part of it too.
Totally. Yes. I had a friend growing up who, their cousins would come and visit from Texas, and they would just go on and on about like how Texas is the best. And I was like, who are you guys? Get out of here. Like, I think it's a similar feeling. Like, I don't know. People, Utah Mormons, just chill. Bring it down a notch.
Yeah. I just read an article that was, I read 2 articles and they were very contradictory, actually. But I had just heard that Mormonism is no longer how do you say that?
Predominant
religion
in Utah. That's been a couple of years. Yeah, it's been a couple.
That was in like a religious article, but then I looked. Then there was another article that said no, there's still like 68% Mormon in Utah.
Was that from Deseret News?
And in that article, no, I don't think so. But in that article, they said it has been said that it is no longer the predominant faith, but in this survey it was. So I don't know. It was like,
interesting.
So, who knows?
We'll have to look that up. Yeah, might be
but there's like
back
different
and forth.
Yeah, there's like different surveys that have been done. So I don't know, but it's close. My point is it's close, which is cool that it's not like so outrageously saturated with just Mormons, or LDS.
And we need to stop assuming that everyone who lives here is Mormon, because I think that's slowly changing too. I think like it's not so often anymore that you move to a new place in Utah and they just assume it.
And it's a terrible habit. And I tried to get away from it when I was the Relief Society president, is when they refer to people as non-members, but they're not a member. It's just like,
Of what?
Yeah. But just, it's so exclusive, as though that's how I don't know.
It's so true.
My grandma, I was
They're
just in the car.
non-member.
Yeah, I was just in the car with my grandma, and she said, I had an Uber ride yesterday, and the Uber driver said that he was from another country and he came here. And she said, it's so great that you're here because we have the church. I'm like, what church? The church? you know, she says that all the time, the church, to people that don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I've
But
gotten
it's
in the
the one and
habit
only you need to know.
I've gotten in the habit, instead of saying non-member, just saying a person of another faith. If you're talking about it within the context of, members of our church or whatever. So I never say non-member anymore. I just say person of another faith or no faith.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's smart.
So how have all these experiences changed your spirituality, Allyson, or your testimony?
Woo. Well, like I said, I feel like I was lost in the sauce in the bubble of the persecuted religious minority, the only true church mindset growing up and when I was younger. But regardless, I feel really grateful for my exposure to a variety of religious traditions throughout my life. And again, even though I had that mindset for far too long growing up, I always, and maybe it's because my parents were converts, and I remember my mom in particular, who grew up fairly religious, she would make note of differences between the LDS church and the church she grew up in. In particular, she did not appreciate that we really didn't celebrate Easter in our church. And years before, because it's only been in the last couple of years that our church, even in general conference, is emphasizing, oh yeah, Easter is this big Christian holiday we should be celebrating. And it was 15 years ago or more that she got our stake in Iowa City as the stake music coordinator to put on these huge Easter cantata programs for the community that the LDS, because we had a lot of like professional musicians associated with the university who were members of our faith, or we'd invite people. And so I think like her often kind of noticing and remarking on the difference, and not always a flattering look at our church, but like, in my church growing up, we did this and it was better. And I wish we would do this in our church, or why do we say this in our church? So and then of course, just having all the friends from different backgrounds and whatever. And like Tiffany was talking about, born this way, I think I was just born with a natural interest in people and cultures in general. So despite my kind of closed-minded mindset or perspective that I had, that exposure to so many different religions and faith traditions was just such a rich tapestry in my mind of just the beautiful diversity of God's people and how God speaks to different people. And as I've gotten older and my faith has expanded and changed drastically in the last 5+ years or so, I completely subscribe to Patrick Mason's garden analogy. And I now think, I'm all in, and I've invested so much of my life here, and I love so much about our unique doctrines. But I now see it as, this is our special, unique part of the garden that we are nurturing and that we have stewardship over. And these other cultures and countries and religions and peoples, they have these other parts of the garden that they have stewardship over, that is just so beautiful and important and valid. And we just need to be bringing it all together. And so for me, like, seeing the strengths of other religions that maybe are weaknesses for us, or seeing the strengths of our religion that might be weaknesses in others, I'm like, we just all need to be working together. We've all got something beautiful and empowering, and that is absolute universal truth to bring to this table to get a full picture of truth. Tiffany talks about it like a big puzzle, and we're one piece of the puzzle, and there's you can talk about it as a tapestry. I don't care how you talk about it. It just, that feels so much more right to me, and beautiful and empowering and connective in terms of human connection and all of God's family, than this idea of, the persecuted religious minority mindset that I grew up with, where we're the one true church. So it's been quite an evolution to go from that to where I am now. But absolutely, this exposure over a lifetime has been an important part of that evolution, a really beautiful part of that evolution that I'm so grateful for now.
Oh, so well said. I love that you said that you came with a natural curiosity about humans, and you're so great with people. Like, you are so, when we first met you at Tiffany's house, you were so welcoming. And I really felt the second I started talking to you, I felt like, well, to both of you, I'm like, have I known them longer than this? You guys are just so warm and just, yeah, you guys are very genuine, and that comes across immediately. And and I love that you mentioned Patrick Mason's analogy, because we love that too. And we had him on this season, and he was incredible and just as amazing in person. I mean, as you would imagine,
He's so genuine and real.
He's my gospel scholar crush.
Oh,
is he really? Yes, own it, girl.
You know what?
Yes.
We kind of have a crush on him too.
Because I'm like, I'm attracted to his smile. Know. Like, when he smiles, it lights me up inside in a way that I'm like,
can you have a crush on a smile?
I really do.
He is just like so grounded and so kind. He like made us feel smarter, and made us feel like so valid. And we're like, this is our podcast. You're making us feel so good. Like, he's
so talented.
And it wasn't that he was saying anything about us. He's just good at what he does.
It's who he is. It's who he is.
Amazing. He's so amazing. He really is. Anyway, I think he's my husband's man crush too, probably. So
I just want to speak. I just want to speak to what Allyson was saying, or speak to her experience.
Yeah.
Because together, that's partly why we make such a good team and such a good friendship, is because we come from different perspectives. So when she has this text exchange yesterday with this woman, Allyson was able to really understand it and converse with her in a way that I maybe wouldn't have. I would have given one line and been like, see you later. But Allison's like, I understand where you're coming from, because I once was there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really helpful sometimes, because I'll spout off like, I don't even understand this. And Allison's like, oh, I do. This is why, perhaps. And it's a really good combination that we are able to offer these different perspectives, or she at least teaches me. I don't know as much as I can with her, but she really has helps me understand people a little better.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyone who's listening to your podcast can feel your guys' chemistry. And I mean, we were like, are they really sisters? Because you guys do, like, you kind of have a way of like joking and bickering with each other, like similar to how Emmy and I do. And you two, your chemistry. And I do agree that you guys very much complement each other.
Yeah. And those arguments or disagreements happened very early on, and it was, and some of them were like doctorate, like church things, but it was, we just felt comfortable enough to push back with each other. And then,
I think that is one, and that is something I look for in other people, and it is very rare. And it is something I wish we could do more comfortably and frequently in the church, to just challenge each other and talk about things that we disagree on, and why do we disagree? Because how will we ever get to truth? And I'll say this in the context of your podcast and what you're doing with your podcast too, like, unless we incorporate and compare and contrast other belief systems, both within our own church, people seeing the gospel differently, as well as outside our church, faith traditions that see things totally differently, unless we compare and contrast and have open dialogue and are willing to be like, now, wait a minute, like, why do you think that? But I think this. Unless you can do that, how will you ever sort out what is true and what isn't? Like, that is anything that is truly a universal truth that is going to be good for mankind is going to come out in the wash of all of that debate and pushback, if you're willing to have it. If you're not willing to have it, and you're just going to sit in your corner, be backed up in your corner with your little scepter of truth and righteousness, it's a small place to be, right?
Amen.
Well, and that's something I really admire about Allyson, is because in all three places, politics, social issues, and faith, we have had disagreements in the past. And now we agree on probably 99.9% of things within those three categories. And so it gives me hope with other people. When I look at other people and I'm like, they're a lost cause. Are they ever? Allison's like, no, people can change.
But maybe you've brought me to the dark side. Maybe I just wasn't persuasive enough.
I've been that in city. You're right. That lady was right. I have just slowly got in and pulled you over.
Yes, I love it. Allison's all worried.
I feel that way with my husband. Like we've been married for 19 years and he's come over to the dark side, like so much. He's like, he thinks so much like me now. I'm like, what have I done to you?
Like, come join me down here.
No, but and Allyson is so intelligent and she's so articulate that some of these, so for example, abortion during the 2020 election, she got really heated and that was one of her platforms she really fought for. And I just sat back so proud and so in awe.
This person?
But yeah, because not only did she disagree with me about that, maybe just 2 years ago, but she's out there fighting. And so it's very, because I have these strong feelings, but I'm not necessarily as vocal. Like if you look at my personal social media versus Allison's personal social media, I keep a lot to myself. And so not only has she shifted, but she is really a force for good and a strong voice for those in her life. And I really admire that because I don't have that kind of patience.
I appreciate that. That's so sweet. I thought you were going to say put myself on the firing line because that's how I feel.
That too.
That too a little. Oh, yeah. You're both so good at that. Yeah. I feel like you guys are just both embody that. And it takes courage. It really does take courage. And I think sometimes we forget that it does. Because like you mentioned, Allyson, it does put you in the line of fire. And, if it's something that you feel strongly about, though, and you feel like it's going to help others, I think the line of fire is worth it in a lot of cases.
I think people probably look at you guys and they're like, hey, but you have this podcast and you have all this knowledge and you have these skills to be able to speak articulately and all of this stuff. But I think it's important for people to realize though, that they can do that in their own little space, people just sharing their actual true feelings in church or sharing their actual true feelings with their friends or in their neighborhoods or with their husband or their wife or their 100%. Extended family members, just being really true to themselves. I think that is so inspiring. And you do that so well on a different type of platform, but I think it's important for people to realize they can do that in their own lives too.
I always say some of the most important conversations that will happen are those ones that you're sitting around a Sunday table with extended family, where you're having it's a safe space because at the end of the day, they're going to love you, but that's where people can start thinking like, oh, okay. Kind of like with Allyson and I, we were good friends. We were secure in our friendship that I could kind of push back or she could push back. And then it's like, oh, we both can kind of learn here. And those conversations.
And it was other friendships too that changed, and it was those one-on relationships with various people in various parts of my life that led to that change. So I agree. Even though, we have this platform and it's validating to the people that hear, I hope more than anything, it just gives them the words and the bravery to have those one-on-one conversations. And that's what I was going to say though, too. I think it's just so important. You kind of just said it and touched on it right there, Emily. It's, at least for me, being older and more confident in who I am and not really caring what other people think, it brings so much freedom and peace for me to just speak my truth, whatever that is. And I wish that for everybody. Even if you put yourself in the firing line, it's just so liberating to speak your truth to power, right?
And I think
but then the other thing is, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Just even, yes, we have this platform, this podcast, but it's listening to those comments or those phone messages that we're now putting at the end of the episodes. These women are way more smart, way more articulate than we are. So many of the DMs that come in and these phone calls now come in, and I'm like, these are incredibly powerful, smart, articulate women. And maybe it's not their time in life or it's not their mission in life to have a podcast, but they are articulate and strong. And I just hope we can give them the little push that they need to say it out loud in the open in public.
And you're giving them a voice, and that's huge. And I think also it takes practice. At the beginning of this podcast, we really want to appeal to everyone, which is hard to do. You know, we want to kind of walk the line, this like neutral line. And that can be tricky, especially when we have all these opinions of our own, you know? And so, but I think over time, and so it's been hard for me to really share what I actually think. And especially in the beginning, I've cared more what people think, I think, because I don't want people to feel excluded or to feel like they're not valid as well. So I feel like it's a hard line to walk, because I don't want to invalidate anyone, but I just also, a lot of it's my own opinions, you know, and it doesn't have to be theirs. But I do feel like as I have spoken out a little bit more about my true feelings and my true thoughts and in my beliefs, it's just gotten easier. And like even like in church, and like I just say it now, you know. And but that does come, it is interesting with age, you just care so much less over time, you know. But also practice, I really think that's the thing as well. Practicing at anything, you know, you really do get better at it, and it becomes more comfortable. We were on a live with Steve from In Good Faith, said that your comfort level, as you get out of your comfort zone, it becomes bigger, like it expands to to more, you know, and you become more comfortable with the uncomfortable as you become uncomfortable. So I love that. And I think that's really valuable. In my mission, we always said that like it's so uncomfortable, and then as soon as you became comfortable, it would change, you know, you'd be moved to another area or whatever. And then you had to relearn something all over again. But it's just building and growing. So.
Oh, can I share a brief story?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
That I have yet to share on our own podcast.
Yay.
I'm thinking how I have to treat it a little delicately, but anyway, but I'm it's what you're saying here. Like I've gotten to a point where I'm just going to say what I'm going to say. I don't have to apologize for it. I don't have to be defensive about it. We teach full-time seminary in our home, early morning seminary. And it was about this time last year. I'll try to keep this short, but we had a person of no faith in our class who was living with a LDS family. And the daughter in the class was gay. And this young man in the class who was not a member of our faith was a huge ally. And the discussion of divorce, Jesus's teaching on divorce and marriage in the New Testament came up. And that led to a discussion about gay marriage. And that led us, long story short, to an almost 2-hour conversation getting pulled into the principal's office, AKA the stake president's office, like a month later. Okay. But here's the thing is both my husband and I, because we have had so many conversations about it, and Tiffany and I've talked so much about it, and we've talked on the podcast about it, exactly what you're saying. Like we went into this interview, and of course they never tell you why they're calling you in. For all we knew, you know, my husband was going to be called to a high counselor position, or I was going to be in a state calling, and all of a sudden we're like under fire for what we didn't actually say about gay marriage. But that's neither here nor there. But we went into this almost 2-hour conversation totally on fire, totally comfortable, totally happy to have the discussion, zero apology, zero defensiveness. And it was fantastic. And when you can have a conversation like that with someone in the church or whatever, just someone in your life, you know, but if we're talking about church topics where you are so comfortable with your position and you can back it up with our doctrine or quotes or scriptures or whatnot, and you don't feel defensive or apologetic, that completely changes the vibe in a conversation. And we left, it was great. It was fantastic. We didn't feel like we were in trouble. He didn't feel like he had power over us. We didn't feel like we had to apologize for anything. And I know at the end of that almost 2 hours that we had blown his mind. I got to be honest, you know, like he was just, like we gave him so much to think about. And not in an antagonist, and not, it wasn't antagonistic or anything. So I'm just, yeah, I guess that's just an example of what you're saying. Like the more you get comfortable talking about this stuff, the less it has to be an uncomfortable conversation. These don't have to be uncomfortable conversations. They shouldn't be. And we need to get better at them so that they aren't.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that so much. And I think you know, even you saying that, like, you just gave him things to think about. These are literally things that some members have never thought about. And so it truly is. Right.
Yeah.
That's where grace comes in, because if it hasn't been something that you've even had to consider, it is going to feel so foreign to you and you are going to be fearful of it when it doesn't have to be that way. So I'm so glad that you said that, because, there really is just a lot of ignorance and lack of knowledge, for better words.
And again, I was that person, so I can speak to that. Like Tiffany was saying,
I love that. Yes. Approaching things in a peaceful way, but just having discussions. It's huge. I love that.
You guys are really good at that.
And you're really good at that. Look at the four of us doing it.
Yeah, we're all good at that.
It's fascinating to realize you guys struggle with the same fine line of trying to appeal to everybody, even though we have very different platforms.
Yes,
it's really interesting.
Yes, it's real. Hard.
And I love that you wanted to talk to Tiffany and I.
I know.
No,
you're so amazing.
That you guys are even here. We have just seriously admired you guys for so long.
And it's so fun to talk to you. It's so easy to talk to you both. It's just so fun. And I think we all have a million things to say to each other all the time. So,
which is why we stayed up till 3 a.m. the first time we met in person. 1 a.m., whatever it was.
I think we got to bed at 3 a.m.
So that's it. Yeah.
Yes. That's why I'm I've known these women longer than this. I know it.
I know. Maybe in heaven. So we do like to end on a lighthearted note. So we ask all of our guests this one question, and you can share this, or we give you an alternative, or you can do both. So we just like to ask you for an embarrassing story. And or for you guys, we would like to ask you for the last book that you read that you were inspired by, or just a book that you read that you would like to share something about.
Tiffany, do you want to go?
I always hate the embarrassing moment story, because it's is it embarrassing? It was really embarrassing at the time, or, but can you translate that? But I will just share one story, and I may laugh my head off while I tell it, and you guys might just be like, I don't understand it. But so once when I was driving, the car I used to drive, the front bumper on it had come off once. I'd hit a tire on the freeway, and so it had made it kind of loose. So it had gotten put back on, but it was not necessarily really put on well. And so one day I was at an outdoor shopping mall, and that the concrete pillars in parking spots when you're have to parallel park in.
Yes.
And when I parallel parked in, that front bumper fell off, right there. Shoot. And it was just separate. And I was just oh my gosh, I've got to call my husband. But I was kind of in a time crunch, and I had to run into a store, and it was this nice springtime day. And my bumper is just sitting right there on the side. And this lady had watched the whole thing, and I turned to her and I said, "Will you watch my bumper for it?" While I run into the store, and I go into the store, and I called my husband. I'm like, "You need to come up and get the bumper," and I'm like, "Someone's watching."
Someone's babysitting the bumper.
And it was I was so, even now I'm thinking about it, so embarrassed, because I'm sure she told people about it, because Mike's what is anyone going to want to do with your bumper? No one's going to take it. You could have just left it there, and it probably would still be there in 4 hours. That you thought so then it made it even more embarrassing that I had just been will you watch my bumper for me? It's just always been
you have
this.
To go out and see her, thank you, I'm good.
Thanks for watching my bumper. My husband's now on his way, so it's silly, but the more I thought about it, I was really embarrassed that I asked someone to watch my bumper.
I love that was a concern. You're not so much that it fell off, but I just don't want it to get stolen.
Exactly.
That is so good.
Well, it could. Yeah.
Yeah, someone might have wanted it.
You just reminded me of an embarrassing story of my own. I always think do I have one that I could share? Because I have my life is an embarrassment, but an actual story that translates, I don't know, but you just made me think of one that's probably not appropriate. I mean, it is, but anyway, you'll see. So I may or may not take this out, but I had kids with me, and I was babysitting, and I went to this gym, and I was a young mom, and I was always all about getting time to yourselves as a mom and the time that you need. So we had $0, but we still went to this fancy gym. I don't know how we afforded it, but it had a childcare. So I had just picked up my kids, and I was babysitting another kid, and I had a kid in I think the kid I was babysitting was in one of the handheld car seats things. Yeah. So they were really heavy and I was pregnant and I had to throw up. So there were all these people standing around me and I was like, crap, I'm going to throw up on the floor if I don't run to the bathroom right now, So I scanned the room and I was like, Kate, is there somebody that I trust to watch the kids while I run to throw up? And like my children, this is why it's inappropriate. I don't know if I can admit this.
Same as a bumper.
Everyone.
It's the same. It's all the same.
And it was like my kids and another kid. I don't know. Anyway, so there was a guy standing there and I was like, not him. And then there was a girl and I went up to her. I'm like, could you watch for just a second? I'm going to throw up. So she did. I ran, I came back. I was kind of embarrassed. The guy came over, he was with her and I was like, okay, whatever. I could have just asked him, but he was like helping her. Anyway, I go to my doctor's appointment and it was my doctor. It was my kid's pediatrician that I hadn't met yet. Like,
oh my gosh.
I was like, oh my gosh.
So funny.
Wow. That is funny.
You're like, I'm a better mom than that. No, but if you gotta throw up, you gotta throw up.
And it's all doctors too. Like it wasn't just one, it was the pediatrician.
Exactly. That's funny.
Knows like if you like how a parent should act.
They call DCFS on you.
That's unreal.
It was so embarrassing. But he's still it's like 16 years later and he's still our pediatrician. And I don't know if he knew it was me. Like if he recognized me, I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
It was like but I just didn't say anything.
He was just being polite, like, oh, I know what kind of parent she really is.
You didn't have a moment where you were like, oh, it's me again.
How did I not do that?
So
funny. I know.
Oh
maybe enough time passed that I wished maybe he just didn't recognize me. I don't know. Anyway, Kay, Allyson, do you
have to
one?
sneak away to get my kids because otherwise I would have texted my mom. Can she jump on a flight from Georgia?
Sorry, I was watching the time and then I had to throw that in.
I just don't want to cut you guys off, so you guys finish it up with Emmy, and because I don't want to miss any, or I don't want to like cut anyone off. So I'm just gonna sneak away. You. But bye guys.
Bye,
Ashley.
So
fun. It seriously was so good to see you guys. I'm always late to get my kids, and I can't be late again.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, Allyson.
I don't have anything that good. Like I'm part of my problem is nothing embarrasses me, and probably what would be really embarrassing for other people are situations that I've literally put myself in. But I'm, a bunch of stories come to mind of like breast milk leaking at the wrong time. And I was a bridesmaid once in a big, tight zip up satin dress when I was a nursing mom. It was terrible, stuff like that. But I would say the most recent thing that was genuinely embarrassing was stepping out of my shower. And I did have a towel on. I grabbed, so we have an open shower. But our towels and bathrobes are right there on the wall, on the open wall. So I did have a towel on, but I came around the corner from our open shower and we've got this big window that opens to our backyard and we're on the first floor. And there's just this guy literally right in my window spraying the yard. I'm just like, hi. And I literally have to like wave at him and then put the drape down, Hi, it's me, stepping out of the shower. Glad I'm not naked. Glad I put the towel on first. Hi. It was terrible.
I don't know why I have all these comeback embarrassing moments to go with you.
You have one that goes with that?
I never do. I never share anything, but this is actually Ashley's husband. So I'll have to see if he's okay with me leaving it here. But just today, Ashley told me this morning. She's like, so they're renovating their house, and he went in to the bathroom and there's no fan. So his dad was like, you just open the window. So he went in and sat on the toilet and opened the window. And the brand new neighbor that they just met, it made eye contact with him while he's on the toilet. He's like, she's not always out there,
Oh my gosh.
That's terrible.
He didn't say anything. He just quickly shut it. Anyway, similar stories. We have similar lives, apparently. That's funny. Well, do you guys have to go, or do you want to share a book story?
I would share my most recent book because it was so good.
That'd be awesome.
You want to go first, though, just so it's the right order, Tiffany?
Yeah.
Sure. So I just read a book. It's by Rachel Rueckert. She works for Exponent and or writes for Exponent, and she was on our podcast with a memoir she did last year. But her recent book is a novel, and it's called If the Tide Turns. And it was so good. It was about, I thought at first when I saw her start writing about it and posting about it, I thought that's not really my style, my type of book. It's based in the 1800s with a pirate and on the East Coast of the United States. And it is such a good book. It's full of it's based very loosely on real people and their experience. And there's a lot of themes of social justice in there and religion, and just her writing is so beautiful that I actually folded over pages and actually journaled some of the sentences because it was just some really thought-provoking books. But it's a lovely story, beautiful writing, and If the Tide Turns by Rachel Rueckert.
Okay,
highly
If
recommend.
The Tide Turns.
CCC Press.
Yes.
So mine I read with. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
so
sorry.
I'm sorry.
I don't think her most recent one was BCC Press, though.
Okay, forget that then.
Let's get out that part.
Sorry.
Okay, go.
So my female Instagram girl crush is Sharon McMahon. I've shared this a lot, and Tiffany knows this. And I'm in her book club, and I just finished one of the books for this season's book club. It's The Distance Between Us by Raina, and I forgot her last name. I almost said Raina Berto, but that would be a former member of our general release. But her name is Raina Grande. It's just Raina Grande. And it's a memoir, and it's the story of her growing up in poverty in Mexico and the journey of immigration to the United States. And I'll just leave it at that. But it talk about, learning people's stories and backgrounds and humanizing them. It's just such an important read right now, I think, as we talk about the border and immigration. It's like such a huge heated topic right now. And I don't think any of us disagree that we need to figure out, we absolutely have got to figure out a better immigration policy in our country and figure out just a more effective way to bring people here, safer way, effective way. But the rhetoric that we sometimes hear, I'm going to say from the far right and Donald Trump, because that's where it comes from, like calling these people animals and suggesting that they're all rapists and drug dealers, and the dehumanizing language about immigrants that comes from Donald Trump and mostly people on the far right, that's just a reality, is very disturbing to me. Because I'm like, we can have this conversation about the best way to do this humanely and effectively and safely, and that's best for our country, but you've got to keep humanity in check in the process. And so reading a book like this, I think, is just important for everyone to understand what it's the reality of why people come here, what it takes to get here, and then the long haul challenge once you get here. I mean, it's not like you cross the border and your life is now rainbows and unicorns, right? So such a good read. It's heartbreaking. It's a tough read, but also just really fascinating to get such an in-depth, microscopic look into the life and the mind of a young girl in poverty-ridden Mexico whose family eventually immigrates to the United States. And she's an outlier in her family, going on to college and now being a best-selling author, but really good read. The Distance Between Us, Raina Grande.
That sounds so good. I have to be careful about sad, devastating stories like that. Like I have to space them, I also like true crime, and I have to be like, okay, now I'm going to watch a funny sitcom for a little while, and then I'll go back.
I used to spend a lot of time just reading really heavy books.
Yeah, Tiffany.
And I realized and same with shows. Like I'd always tell Allyson, she's like, you're watching the wrong things. You're reading the wrong things.
Show.
And so I'm actually reading a friend's manuscript right now of his own memoir. And so I'm like, I just have to balance with much lighter.
Tell me what the topic is too.
Yeah, it's the topic of his experience being abused within the framework of the LDS Church.
Sexual abuse in our church. Yeah, it's a heavy story.
I don't think I could do that one at all.
You both need to go watch The Lost Kitchen or Palm Royale. That's your lighthearted show to go watch.
Okay. Oh, good to know. Okay.
Obsessed with both.
Oh, I'm excited. Okay. It depends on the time of my life too. I mean, and that can be like day by day.
Right.
Like sometimes I can handle, and sometimes I can't, but I'm reading The Courage to be Disliked, and I can't say the author's name, but my mom's been telling me about it forever. And I've just had it like on my list of books, and it finally made it to the top. So, it's,
I'm assuming it's nonfiction.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But, it's so good. It's so good. I just barely started it, but so far it's so interesting. It's like between a philosopher and somebody that's really skeptical of his philosophy. And so it's like a back and forth conversation. It's really interesting. But like I said, I just barely started it, but so far it's kind of, what we were talking about, like not caring what people think. And anyway, and he talks about how people can change, and this guy that's skeptical is like, I just don't believe that. I don't think people can change. So I'm really excited to see how he said that can happen, so
good.
It'll be fun. Anyway, so yeah, this one feels lighthearted, and then maybe I'll attack one of yours. Those sound great.
So Emily, do you share a new embarrassing story on every episode, or did we just get lucky to get 2 from you in one episode?
No, I never have. I never
You could just relate to both of ours.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that weird? I don't know why. Yeah, you just, and I've even thought about it. We ask every guest, and I've even thought after, like, what would I share? And I can't think of anything.
Yeah.
So the fact that I thought of 2 with you guys, you're just relatable, I guess.
We bring embarrassing thoughts up in people's minds, Tiffany.
We do.
I have so many too, but none of them really make sense. Like you were saying, Tiffany,
like
they wouldn't be funny to anyone else, you know, but anyway, you are a delight. Thank you so much.
You are a delight.
Amazing.
You are too. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for listening to That's Church. If you haven't already, check out the Sisterhood Podcast. It's a powerful space for real conversations about faith, politics, social issues, and the lived experiences of women. And remember, our good friend Tiffany Sowby started Rising Violet, a nonprofit giving one-time $1,000 gifts to women pursuing financial independence. To keep up with everything we're doing at That's Church, our podcast, events, field trips, book club, and upcoming retreat, follow us on Instagram at That's Church Podcast, and visit our awesome website. It's kind of new and it's amazing, that'schurch.org. We'll see you next time on That's Church.